And we're live. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Happy Thursday. Oh, were you going to say something?
Good morning.
Oh,
Forgot that I wasn't in the mic. I'm finishing a text. Sorry.
what did we say about using your phone at the table, David?
Well, okay. So
I'm just kidding.
I don't think we've actually said anything about
like
that.
people have their Bibles on there now. I might have been doing something really spiritual.
You have your Bible in
You
front
said-
of you.
except you said you were sending a text.
Yep,
You
I'm
already
sending-
declared that.
I'm sending a text.
Text
Hang on, I'm almost done. How are you guys today?
We'll wait.
Yeah.
Doing pretty good.
Well, good.
Yeah. No complaints.
Got through the fourth. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, ate too much, but
Yeah. Didn't have anything to eat, did we?
got to bed pretty early. It was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah. We didn't watch fireworks. We haven't watched fireworks for quite a few years now.
It was cool this year that I didn't hear hardly any. I don't know if you guys heard any in your neighborhood.
No.
Usually
I didn't hear any.
Usually there's a lot going off, even when they've been banned
Yeah.
in previous years. Like there's a lot going on. I didn't hear nothing this year.
Usually late in the evening, midnight-ish, you hear
Yes.
some shotguns or something going off.
Well,
Yeah. I didn't even hear that.
That's New Year's, Brent.
I hear it on the fourth.
Yeah.
too.
Our neighborhood it sounds like that too. Sounds like shotguns.
See, ours
Yeah.
start like around 9, usually 10. You know, people are going to town. Not this year,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
good.
Well, America.
Our neighborhood did not burn down. So, well, everyone's going to drones now. So, like now it's like very uncool to do like old school fireworks.
Right. They're bad for climate
There's-
change or something.
They're bad for all kinds
Yeah.
of reasons. I saw one
And
rant
fires and-
that a bunch of people jumped on, and it was silly
Yeah.
what these people were saying.
Well, Sun River Resort's doing a drone show this
No,
weekend.
drones are the way of the
Yeah.
future for fireworks.
An environmentally friendly, they call it.
Yeah.
Drone display or
Wonder
drone
if it'll
show.
look cool. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know
just
either.
worried about what happens when Skynet takes over the drones. Then we're in trouble.
Yeah, no,
All right.
Yeah,
Just
I don't know what to
just
do
went
with that.
Full, just went full nerd on us.
I did.
Wow.
I got to do that once in a while.
Yeah.
Yep, I did hand Lincoln a sparkler. He tripped out. I almost burned his eye with it, but but yeah, he was tripping out. He was just staring at it.
I
And
heard
then he threw
somebody
it down and walked away.
somebody titled those "Anxiety on a Stick,"
Is that what that is?
and I would agree. That's what those things are.
You don't like that, Brett?
Well, especially you hand it to a kid, and they're just gonna what are they gonna do with that exactly? Are they gonna just grab the shiny part? Are they gonna light somebody else on fire?
I don't know if there's
So
a ton
much-
you can do with it.
So much could go wrong. I mean, I've been around my whole life. Nothing bad's happened with a sparkler, but
We
you know
used
me.
to when I was younger. Remember the metal sparklers? They don't have metal sparklers
Yeah.
anymore. But if you took like a dozen of them and you duct taped them together and then
Yes.
you lit them on fire, you
Yes.
could get them to explode.
Yeah, you could do some stuff.
Yeah.
You can get creative.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, there
Brent,
you go, kids.
Get busy living or get busy dying, right? Isn't that what Morgan Freeman said? Or no, that's what the other guy said.
It's a fine line. isn't it?
Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. Yeah.
Well, let's get busy.
Get busy doing thisy.
Yeah. What are we doing today?
We're doing.
You're still texting. That's what you're doing today.
No, I'm just checking. Thanks. One he's getting at, so trying to figure out what church he's going to and all that stuff on Sunday. So I won't be here. That's why we're doing this today. I'm going to Portland. Have you guys? Let's start with this. Have you guys ever been asked to preach somewhere where they provide your text and your title? By the way, if Dan Hickman's watching, just turn it off right now. There's going to be like a spoiler alert. But have you guys ever been like asked to preach somewhere and then they tell you absolutely how you need to do all of it? Like even like exposition wise?
No.
I've had some suggestions. It'd be great if like I think Glenn used to, CBC. Hey, we're in Acts. You're going to be in this chapter. But that was about it. They give you, chapter and maybe a section, which is fine.
Yeah, I've had that.
But yeah, you got like, this is the title. This is what you shouldn't talk about. This is what you should talk about.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Some committee like decided what
Well,
I'm
that's
doing
what it
like
is.
a year ago.
It's not that they're so locked down. They literally just have it planned out. They're one of those I heard there's churches that are organized and think things through long term. Apparently,
Yeah.
Who knew? And so they've thought that this is already set in stone a long time
Yeah.
ago. So it's not like how do we keep this guy holstered
Yeah.
and keep him tame?
Yeah.
I don't think that was the idea. Although
No.
it's not a bad idea.
No, I mean Dan invited me to come, and then and I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then I got the text, and it's like, no, I don't want to come preach on this text really. So we're going to talk about this text today.
So we're getting you ready for Sunday.
Yeah, I mean it's
It's ready, but
it's done. But
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm not going to get crazy. So
I thought where you went with this particular passage was very good.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
partly why we decided
Agreed.
to talk about
well,
it
the
today.
title is. I'm getting on my phone.
We called it Temple Prophecy just to get people to click on it and say, what the heck's
Yeah.
going on with the temple?
The title
So-
they gave me for this sermon is Christians in a Cancel Culture. So, like it sounds like they were expecting like me to emphasize in one direction the cancel culture, but it actually, as I read more through it, realized that I'm going to probably turn it around a little bit. We'll get there.
All
Yeah.
right.
I'm going to read the text. You're going to watch us read the text. You're going to hear the text. It's Luke 21, 5 through 19. And then we'll just go back and make some comments. I got a couple questions for you. I didn't really write many questions, though, because I figured you guys would have plenty to say, especially Chad. Dude never shuts up.
Yeah.
So
It's my gift.
it's my gift. Luke 21, 5 through 19. While some were... And while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, Jesus said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." And they asked him, "Teacher, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when these things are about to take place?" And he said, "See to it that you are not led astray. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time is at hand. But do not go after them. And when you hear when you hear of wars and tumults," and what's a tumult? It's a funny word.
A tumult?
It's bad. That's what it
It's
is.
like a tumor.
Yeah.
I think things are shaking when
Tumults
that
are
happens.
bad.
When you hear of wars and tumults, don't be terrified, for these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once. Let's just stop there and deal with that one, because then it kind of goes from the temple to them,
Yeah.
and what Jesus says and what I'm teaching. So, temple stuff. This thing was pretty rad, as far as just the structure. Like when you start reading about it, like it's kind of more impressive.
How many
than-
years did it take to build a temple?
Brent, don't ask me questions like that. Those
Yeah.
those things don't concern me. Okay.
I'm assuming you know the answer to that.
I think it was 46. Somebody can correct that. But I remember them when Jesus said, destroy this temple, and 3 days later, I'll rebuild it.
Yeah.
They were like, this took 46 years to build this thing. You're going to rebuild it in 3 days? Like, you must have quite a team.
Yeah.
Contractors here. This took us a long time. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think it was
That's a
46
valid
years.
question.
Point I was getting at was that it was extremely elaborate because it
Yeah.
took
It
a
was
very
ex-
long time to build.
It was extremely elaborate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was considered, like in some of the stuff I read, like greater in many ways than the 7 like known wonders of the world at that time. Like people knew the temple was like even better than some of these other things that were wonders, you know? So like it was a pretty big deal. And of course here we got these guys sitting around admiring it. They had just come out. We have the story of the widow who has nothing and gives all that she has, and the rich dude that has everything and gives very little, and that whole story. And then they're walking out of the temple and they're stopping and they're drawing, you know, the disciples are just basically basking in its glory. And the thing was pretty rad. The stones, I saw that like one of the stones that's still there is like 45 feet by 11 and a half feet by 12 feet, coming in at like 570 tons.
Wow.
One stone,
That's a big stone.
which is interesting because of the statement that he makes. Like, so it's not like it would be easy. It's not like you bring in an earth mover like we could today and just start pushing things over. Like these things were kind of a big deal, and we'll come back to that. My first real question is, what do you think the temple meant to these guys? Because I think it's easy for us to read through this. We're not Jews. We've never lived with a temple as our monument, the monument of our culture and race. They did. What did it mean to them? What did it represent for them?
Kind of everything.
Pretty much everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
central to life.
Yeah, I think their identity, even as a nation,
Yes.
as the people of God,
Yes.
everything that basically defined who they were and what was important to them was all wrapped up in this building that represented all of that.
Totally.
That was God's presence. That was
Yep.
God's blessing. That was their way to interact with God. I mean, it was everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree. What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I agree. Just,
Yeah,
it's
so
the center of life.
So it was kind of it was autonomy, that we're unique.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those, like, we're unique from other nations. Like
This is what
we are
separates us,
special
yeah.
in this way, and this
Yeah.
thing tells us that every time we walk into it or every time we look at it. Like this tells us that. It tells us that we're God, so we're special, right?
Yeah.
We're different than you because we're God's people, you know. And so it definitely said that as well, and just the whole autonomy thing, you know, like, you know,
Yeah.
we're different, but it was definitely identity. All those things are identity. It gave them it was a structure of
Yeah.
identity. What we would even call maybe a monument, in a way. Do we have anything like that as Americans?
Yes.
Do we have multiple things?
Yeah,
like that
multiple
as
things.
Americans?
Yeah, I think that would probably depend on the American that you ask today, probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think when you look at the older generations that have been around for a while and kind of seen what this country was, and I think there was a lot more of that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Maybe with younger generations, there's not as much of that per se. But
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
I think there's definitely this idea that again, this is like God blessed this country. God kind of marked this country as special. There's something that we have to really, this is our identity is wrapped up in this. We're different than other countries. We're
Yeah.
we're blessed by God. We're special. I mean, there's definitely that kind of a
For sure.
mindset, I think, among some.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
we were given a I don't know when the date is, but we were given a monument that basically said that, from a French dude, that sits off, that sits on Ellis Island. Statue of Liberty is one of those things that says you're different. Like, it says a lot of things when you look at it. And
Right.
You see why it's there, and you understand why it's there. Of course, when you get into DC, there's tons of
Monuments
icons
everywhere.
There's tons of monuments and tons of icons.
Even
we have
something
there.
as basic as, not basic, but as common is a better word, as the American flag.
I was going to say
Yeah.
the flag is
You
the
know,
biggest one.
Is the
Yes.
that what that represents, and
Yes.
if somebody throws that on the ground or
Yes.
burns it or desecrates it in some way, it'll upset a patriot pretty good.
Right.
It's not something we like to see
For sure.
trashed because of what
Yeah.
it represents.
Yeah, we esteem it
Yeah.
pretty highly. It's that is our greatest monument. I think that and the Constitution. But we do have a lot of them for sure.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something, Brent, with that. Kind of as generations change, the monuments change,
Yeah.
and so for the older generation, it's definitely like the flag, the institution of the country, those kinds of things. But for more modern generation, like me, self is maybe the new temple.
Yeah,
I have my own constitution, I have my own truth, I have my own rights.
Yeah, I
and
don't
those
have
kinds of
that.
things.
I don't have that myself. I'm more of a patriot, but
Oh,
you
sure,
are
yeah,
extremely
we all are.
patriotic.
I've got that too, actually,
Right.
Chad. So.
But do you have a cutout of Ronald Reagan?
Well, I didn't know there was one available. I mean, not that I wouldn't.
Dude, who wouldn't want that, right? I agree that, like, when you have like a regime change, doesn't matter if it's from outside or inside. When there's a changing of thought and a changing
Sure.
of power, let's even say, then our monuments can be the first things to be destroyed.
Right.
So in
And
terms
people
of
have
what,
always worshipped self. I mean, that's nothing new, but,
Totally.
but it just seems like, as we're talking about kind of our monuments and our temples,
yes,
we're seeing this shift in culture where, the temple is very, kind of self and I decide what my temple is and I worship at my temple, and it's not a communal kind of
Yeah.
a temple, like maybe things used to be.
The common denominator, though, is autonomy, which you were talking about
Yeah, yeah.
before.
It's
This
autonomy.
idea that I you basically don't want anybody else telling you how to live, what you have to do, those types of things, and whether
Yeah.
it's our country that feels that way, or whether it's
Yeah.
an individual that feels that way, or whether it's
this is why it
the
had
Jewish
to be
people.
so
Yeah.
devastating when Jesus actually said this to these guys. Like, you could only kind of imagine. We don't have a lot here as far as like their initial response. It seems like they immediately responded, like believed him. I'd almost think like they would think that he's crazy at first for even suggesting such a thing, because it's so big and
Sure.
I would think that.
awesome, but
I would think it's another one of those things like Jesus said a lot of stuff to him that they probably went, what's he talking about?
Totally.
Does he
Right.
mean that? He didn't mean that.
Here he goes again
Yeah,
with
here he
his
goes. He
fortune
might-
cookie.
Yeah, this will
you
mean
know,
something
stuff.
different later.
Yes.
In AD 70, they probably went, oh, he wasn't kidding around.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
wow, that was literal even. Wow,
Yeah.
darn. So like, even
But-
the one stone upon another.
But it sounds like an impossible thing. Like this could never be taken
Totally.
down.
Right.
This could never happen.
Totally. Yeah. But when you have a changing of power and people with different ideas coming in, they had Rome coming in that wanted to kill their identity and establish a Roman identity, and even in our nation today, with people that don't appreciate the flag and the things that have been around that kind of establish our identity, you've got the same thing where there's a canceling of it, right? Let's get rid of the monuments first. Let's deal with the monuments and the icons first, right? And that's kind of what this is. Obvious question, when did this happen? Did it happen? And when did it happen? This temple, this prophecy actually happening.
I already gave the answer.
Yeah,
I know,
you
but
did.
let's give it
Yeah.
again. Let's talk about it a little more.
AD 70.
Are you a preterist? What are you saying?
In regards to this passage, this section, yes, I suppose.
By the way, the parallels are Matthew 24, which is where it gets a little more complicated for people eschatologically, because there's another component, it seems, that's added there, even though I would argue it's mostly preteristic. And then I think that Mark 13 is the other one. So those are kind of the parallels. Mark 13 is actually like identical to this. Like,
I know we're not going necessarily end times discussion here, but
we can talk about whatever
Well, there's
we
probably a
want,
lot
but
of people that don't know
we
what
have 45 minutes that we need to fill.
They probably don't know what preterist means, and you mentioned that word, so
Yeah.
you might explain that.
Well,
term.
like preterism just means like immediate. So they're like more of an immediate fulfillment. And a lot of prophecy, I know that we all agree with this. A lot of prophecy throughout the Bible, Old Testament too, has an immediate fulfillment and then an ultimate
Right.
fulfillment. And that's where all the confusion and controversy and disagreements with how you view prophecy and end time stuff comes, is interpreting and sorting out the immediate and then the ultimate and what was the ultimate and all that good stuff. So
a true full preterist would say that AD 70 finished the prophecy that Jesus gave during the Olivet Discourse. So everything he talked about, even like what we would think of as the Great Tribulation, some of those things that finished, that was all
correct.
immediately fulfilled there.
Correct.
And it's done.
Which he ends that section on the Olivet Discourse by saying, "I promise you, this generation won't pass until all these things are done." So, like you can read that and go, "Okay, if Jesus is serious here, then like he was taught, he was
Right.
everything embodied in what he intended in that Olivet Discourse prophecy happened." Like whether we understand it that way or not.
And then there's other people that would say, no, not much happened in AD 70 at all, but it's all still
Yeah.
future. And then there's another way to look at it, which I would say I kind of lean towards, but I'm not sure,
Yeah.
is
Partial
the two
preterism.
hills kind of thing, the idea of you've got a partial fulfillment and then still a future fulfillment. And there are prophecies in the Bible that have been that way. So
Correct.
you see the first hill, that's AD 70. When that one is done, then you can see the second hill. Oh, there's still stuff that has to happen.
Yeah.
And again, that's, the different people have different ideas, but
So that's immediate fulfillment. and
definitely
ultimate
some stuff
fulfillment.
happened in AD 70 that when Jesus said this thing's going down, it did.
It went
Yeah,
out.
80, 70. I think that we could read Luke's piece here, like his account of it, and without a doubt,
Right.
it's like this was for them
Yeah.
and something they experienced, plain and simple,
Right.
period.
Right. Well, even
Yeah,
when,
it
I
seems
don't think
clear.
we're going to get down into verse 20, but he continues on. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, its desolation has come near. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Hope you're not pregnant. Don't run back to
All of the
get some
discourse
stuff.
doesn't- goes through.
It's all of that, and literally they watched Jerusalem get surrounded by Roman armies.
Yeah, you got Josephus that actually documents this. He was a Jewish historian at the time, and he uses a lot of the same descriptions, even though he wasn't,
Right.
even though these weren't written. So it's like, oh, okay.
Well, in the time of tribulation for the Jewish people at that time was great.
Yeah.
So it was no small thing what
was
happened
huge.
in AD 70. What Jesus prophesied there,
Yeah.
it definitely happened and went down in,
It
in
was
a
huge.
major
Yeah,
way.
there was no question.
So Titus of Rome came in,
Yeah.
ransacked the temple, took over Jerusalem, brutalized the people and the town, the city. It was said that they torched the inside. I mean, you read different things on this, but overall, people seem to agree with this. It's not very disputed that that the Roman soldiers torched the inside of the temple. Because you're thinking to yourself, like, how are they going to get these stones? Like, how would they dismantle the temple, right? And so the story goes that they actually lit the inside of it, the stuff inside of it, on fire. A lot of the inside of the temple was adorned with gold and inlaid with gold. There was gold everywhere. And as that gold started to melt, apparently the Roman soldiers realized, oh my goodness, like it's going in between the cracks of the stones. And so they ended up dismantling, like taking their time to dismantle the temple so they could get all the gold out from between.
Interesting.
And it's like, ding, 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 ding. It's an interesting thing.
I thought
to
they just
think
wanted to
Yeah.
make a really definite statement. Yeah. I mean, if you
We're going
want
to go to
Well,
the
they-
trouble
they
right
did.
now for the next 3 years to take this thing apart.
if you're dealing with a 570-ton stone, there's
Yeah.
going to come a point where you're going to be like, oh, you know what? I think we proved our point already. We
Yeah.
can walk away from
Exactly.
this. But if there's gold and then there are cracks,
Yes.
Right.
Then we're taking. Then the stones have to go. They just have to go.
that's right.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems that that's what happened. So
That's awesome.
most people believe like this, like fully, completely, literally, as Jesus said, not one stone will be left. Because you can be used metaphorically as just destruction,
Sure.
demise, right? It seems like this was probably legit. Like they dismantled the thing. So, and of course, if you go over to there today, you're not seeing that structure. You could. I mean, it would totally be around if it was still standing.
Yeah.
But it ain't there.
And it's weird to think that the repercussions of that, what that did to the people, what that
Oh yeah.
still to this day.
Yeah.
No, that metaphorically said
affects
something
them.
to the people
Yeah.
when they dismantled
Yeah.
their icon, their monument, their identity. Yeah,
Crazy.
exactly.
You
Crazy,
kinda-
crazy.
You kind of wonder, like, when that happened, what people were thinking, like thinking back to what Jesus said and just how that might have blown their minds.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, when AD 70 rolled around. Yeah. But it seemed like they believed it, right?
Yeah.
Because he's going to go into next. Next is the
this is what he
continuation
meant.
of. Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and read that 10 to 19. Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, various places, famines, pestilence, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my name's sake." And that's key, for my name's sake. "This will be your opportunity to bear witness. Settle it, therefore, in your minds, not to meditate beforehand how to answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be delivered up even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends. Some of you they will put to death. You will be hated by all for my name's sake, but not a hair of your head will perish." That's metaphor. "By your endurance, you will gain your lives." So it just goes from bad to worse.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, again, you can just imagine like being one of these guys at this point, hearing all this at once, like taking all this in and going like, what are we doing? You know, what's going on? So, in light of the fact that the world will hate and mistreat these guys, and this is one of those what's not there is where I'm going to spend a lot of my sermon. What do you think their response would be to what they're going, like what they would be thinking to themselves? Like, oh, you're going to have the whole world basically against you. Like it's just going to be one attack and onslaught after. It's just going to be an onslaught. What would you think their response is supposed to be to something like? What would your natural response to something like that be? Let's put it that
I'm out.
way.
I'm out. That's my response.
Yeah,
My
okay.
natural response. I'm out.
Find a way to avoid that.
Yeah.
Or you find a way to fight it, right? Like,
Yeah.
like either you're going to fight back and you're going to retaliate, you know,
Yeah.
evil for evil or whatever you want to call it, or yeah, you dip. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
Fight or flight, I guess.
yeah, and it's interesting to me that there's nothing about fighting it here. We know they didn't
No.
dip. We know that they stayed, and we also know that there's not a fight or like a defense that happens here. It's like
Jesus doesn't tell them to take their country back.
right, which is
Right.
really interesting to me. Again, if we're going to carry on the parallels, like we started with the temple, like we're seeing like a wrong thinking in the American church today as our icons and monuments
Yep.
are being canceled. We're actually in a mindset of canceling back, right? And it just hit me as I'm looking at this passage that that has no place in the follower of Jesus.
Sure.
When the world comes against us, right? Even with our nation, even with things that are precious to us, and we just don't do that. So I don't know if you want to talk about that for a minute, but I'm going to spend a good time in my sermon on it. So
I might be jumping ahead, but I think your response to that depends on your temple. And
Sure.
And so if for the Jewish people, if this was everything to them, and then Rome comes in and takes it, then fighting to get your temple back
But here we're
is
going-
all you can do.
It
right.
makes sense in that
But here we're going
scenario.
from one temple to another. So we started with the physical temple.
Correct.
Now we're talking about their bodies.
Well, and that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
that's why I said it
Yeah.
depends on which temple. So
Yeah.
even in America, I think we see the same thing.
Totally.
You know what? If America is the temple, or not, we know it's not.
Right.
But I mean, if that's how you treat it, this is everything to us.
Right.
This
Sure.
nation is, as America goes, so Christianity goes. If that's the way you think,
Right.
even if you don't fully, you wouldn't say you believe that.
For
That's
sure.
how you act. Then yeah, taking up arms and fighting for this kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But if you've got a different view of the temple, then yeah.
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 Or even more than a temple, like what's your kingdom?
Yeah.
Right?
True.
What kingdom are you fighting for? What kingdom are you trying to defend?
Well,
or
one
to
temple's
protect or to
threatened
represent?
and one's not.
Right.
For sure.
And
Right.
that's because it
Right.
depends
The
on which
Christian
kingdom.
has a kingdom.
Yeah.
That
Well,
can't,
we-
that can't be shaken.
We hear it a lot, right? We all know people. We all know Christians that some of them seem to be like pretty solid Christians that are about protecting their rights to bear arms so that they can load those guns when things get really bad. It's almost like the name of the game for the Christian is let's see how long we can stay alive when things go bad. And really what they're doing is they're protecting themselves and fighting against the tyranny that's coming
Yeah.
to take their life. And
Protecting what's mine.
here's just another one of those, these long dialogues from Jesus that's clear. Like they're going to hate you. And there's not one thing in it about any kind of a retaliation or a fighting back.
No.
I mean, Peter, picked up the sword and cut the centurion's ears off. And Jesus just like, put your sword down. Right. And he would say the same thing to us. Right. Like,
I think part of
Yeah.
it is that we've never had to think about this or really deal with it.
no, we haven't.
Right.
Not on the scale of this. I mean, there's always been persecution in the church, and Christians will always kind of be maligned for the way they think sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But in America, everybody's kind of gone along with
We've had it pretty easy.
with our way of thinking,
For sure.
or at least it felt that way for a long time, and now that's
Yeah.
that's not happening. So this is a foreign concept to us. So I can understand,
Yeah.
your initial reaction to something like this is like, wait a second.
We don't
Yeah.
really understand this
No.
fully when we read it.
Most of Christianity does and has
Yes.
throughout history.
Right.
But
we're
don't
a bit of
as
an anomaly
the
in
American
that.
church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jesus says, I mean, it's verse 13 is the center of this will be your opportunity for witness. Like when it all hits the fan, when it all starts to go downhill, when things get tough, like this is your opportunity. Not to fight, not to defend, but it's your opportunity to bear witness.
So you have led me perfect, Chad, into the thing that I think I'm going to spend the most time on. I think the biggest application is what we see is a canceling going on of Rome of the Jews by Rome, right? First they start with their monuments, then they move to them, right, as a people. Christians is really what we're talking about here, not just Jews. It's easy for us when someone opposes us and mistreats us and takes everything that we hold dear to cancel them. Okay, so not even talking
Right.
about guns, weapons, swords, talking about a canceling of the gospel or the witness, something good that they need, we cancel them. And I know we've all seen that so much. Like it's so discouraging in our
Right.
world, in America today, where Christians are so angry at the thinking and the lifestyles of the non-Christian that we're canceling the distribution of the gospel to
Right.
them. We're canceling our love. We're absolutely just putting them away altogether. And this is really what challenged me when I saw it and what I'm going to challenge the congregation with this week.
Yeah, I would say one of those is to be expected.
Yeah.
That the world would cancel us
Yes.
is what Jesus
Sure.
told us
Yep.
would happen. That we would cancel them
Yep.
is in direct violation of the Great
It's
Commission.
antithetical to the gospel. And
yeah.
it's tragic when Christians don't understand that they're engaging. in
How
that
have we
behavior.
got this so wrong? Like, it's just so, like, are you reading your Bible? Like, I don't know how people get this wrong.
Well, again, it depends on which temple you're.
Right.
One temple needs to be defended and fought for, and one doesn't. So it's just it depends on which temple you're all about.
Yep.
And if your temple is a temporal one that's earthly and that's there was a time when the temple in Israel represented something different. I understand
sure.
that, but it got to the point where when Jesus came, it became irrelevant. And that's true of us as well. We have a better temple, and that's the part that I don't think most people get.
Yeah.
We're strangers in this land, and people aren't thinking that way.
Yeah.
So that's how you can arrive there.
Right.
I seem to be more and more these days kind of maybe not all roads, but many roads lead back to just a consumeristic faith. And when my faith is all about me, and when I approach my connection to Christ with what I get out of it, the temple really is me in that scenario, and it does need to be defended. But when we have a biblical understanding of Christianity, that as Christians we exist in the world for people who aren't yet Christians, that we have a duty and a mandate to proclaim the gospel to those who do. I did say duty. Sorry, but I didn't say do.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That would have been funny though. I would have giggled.
Duty.
Do you I tend to think like idolatry is always at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like that will lead to consumerism, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like it's loving something more than you should. Right. It's putting your worship and your affections too squarely on something that it doesn't belong on. And I think that a lot of Christians don't have no idea how to like parse that out when they're doing it. So it's good for us to look at our country and be patriots and be grateful for the people that have gone and sacrificed. And so you can look at it and see all these good things and say, so this just equals good. And then we end up worshiping this thing. And even on the other end, like you said earlier, like if you're not flying the flag enough or dressed in red, white, and blue on the 4th of July or whatever, then you would be like a defector, right? Like you would be looked down upon. And so it's easy for us to put all our eggs in that basket and go, this matters most. And then forget that our longing needs to be this other kingdom rather than this kingdom. And so there's all this confusion that goes on. And
well, even the idea, and I think we talked about this a week or two ago, maybe a couple weeks back, that our enemy is not an enemy of flesh and blood. Our enemy is an enemy that we can't see.
I'm going into that too on this sermon.
Yeah, and we
know your enemy.
We engage in the wrong fight as Christians. Oftentimes.
Ding, 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 ding. There it is right there. Yeah. So if we can identify who the enemy is, it will help us in which fights we know we need to engage in, which fights we know we need to stay out of. It starts with knowing who the enemy is.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and then the other thing is recognizing your idols, because you guys just talked about that, but I think we don't. So for me, the rights, American rights,
totally
are something that I appreciate.
I'm
glad I have them. I want to have them as long as possible.
Yeah.
But we've begun to see these as God-given rights and not temporary rights. And they're not. None of them are promised. I mean, when if you were to just like study your Bible for your God-given rights, Paul would be like, "What did you call them? What are you talking about?"
Right.
That's a foreign concept to me.
Yeah.
You have the right to get killed.
And
mistreated.
We don't. But again, so those have become idols to fight for.
Sure.
Temples to fight for, whatever you want to call them. And again, I don't want them to go away. I don't think any of us do.
Yeah.
What are we using them for? While we have them, hopefully we're using them to build the kingdom,
for sure,
and not to build our own kingdom. And that's the fine line there,
for sure. So. And there's a different interpretation, just like with love, like we talked about last week. People can interpret liberty in different ways, because the Bible actually talks about liberty a lot, but it's always in the context of from self, sin, and Satan.
Right.
Yeah.
I found, I'm going to post this on Monday since we just had 4th of July. It's a quote by Pink that says, "True liberty is not the power to live as we please, but to live as we ought."
Yeah.
And that's really how the Bible, that's really what Christ has given us when he came. And he's liberated us from the death cell of our sin and separation, right? So that we might live as we ought to God.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what it's about. But we are caught up in this autonomy thing, which is actually anti-God. That's actually what started this whole mess.
Right.
Is that we just want to be a free will people and do whatever the heck we want. And America has allowed us to do that because of the way that it's been constructed. We love it.
Yeah.
It's actually contrary to the kind of liberty that the Bible talks about.
Right.
So,
Well, it's interesting in countries that don't have what we have here. where there's Christians, they know what this freedom is.
Yep.
They like Paul understood this. You know, he got, even though he was in a prison cell, he knew that in Christ he was completely free.
Totally.
Didn't
Right.
matter what they did to
Totally.
them. I mean, this is like Matrix freedom. It's a
Totally.
whole different kind of, you know,
It's a different level.
It's the kind you want to have.
It's a different
because
dimension.
It can't be taken
Yes.
from you because it's grounded
That's
in,
right.
in the person and work of Christ.
Yeah,
it's it's kept safe for you in heaven. That's the kind of freedom that we need to get excited about.
Absolutely.
Not the temporal freedoms we have here, because those could leave tomorrow.
They're
Right.
fleeting. They're passing.
Yeah.
They're fading.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible would tell us that we're either bound to self and sin or we're bound to Christ. And so there's this sense in which free will is sort of a myth.
Yeah.
You're bound to one or the other. And I've mentioned this before, but I think of Keller talked about once about like if the fish was designed to be in the water,
Yeah.
right? And if the fish were out on land, it would die. And so life isn't about having complete freedom and liberty and autonomy, but being bound in the right ways to the right things.
Being where and how you should be.
Right, and it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's switch gears for a second. Here's a little more lighthearted and weird. What do you guys think that verse 14 means? Jesus says, "Settle in your minds, not to meditate beforehand how you ought to answer." It's kind of a, where do you go with that? Because I feel like you can go a little
Yeah.
too far with that. Was it something that was special and unique to the apostles, the guys that he's talking to, and the things that they would be facing, or is this something that's for all of us? Or what does
yes
it mean?
and yes.
Okay, what is it?
He's saying don't overthink it.
Do you guys overthink your sermons?
I don't overthink
No, never.
anything. I don't overthink anything ever. I don't even know what this verse is here for.
Well, you hear those things all the time,
I don't
right?
even prepare
Like,
sermons. I just get up and wing it every Sunday.
when you guys
because
walk
of
away
this.
from your notes, right, which happens from time to time, people interpret that. Like when they see someone that doesn't use notes, even they'll come up and be like, that person was filled with the Spirit,
Right.
Because they didn't have any notes. And I feel like this is one
Right.
of those verses that you can look at to make
Oh, yeah.
to make a point.
Yeah, he's not saying that. I don't think.
Thank you, Chad. I wanted
No,
to
I mean
establish
we're
that.
told elsewhere to study to show ourselves approved,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to know the word, to be in the word, to meditate, to memorize it. So it's not like we're not supposed to do our due diligence there. But the cool thing is when you're stuck in a spot, I can imagine scenarios and imagine conversations I'm going to have, and they're going to say this, and then I'll say that, and then I'll
Right.
respond with this, and then they're
Yeah.
going to do this. Well, you can do that all day long, and none of it's real or going to happen necessarily.
sure.
But what he's saying is you don't have to do that.
Yep.
When
Yeah.
the time comes and you get pulled in, and you're standing before these people,
Yep.
and you're not going to you're going to be
Yeah.
terrified.
He'll give you what you need. in the
I'll give you
moment.
what you need.
Yeah.
And he does that. I've seen that so many times when you're in the middle, you're in a conversation
Yep.
with somebody, when you're talking about the gospel, they come with you with an argument or something like that. All these verses flood into your mind, all these things to think about come into your mind. And it's
Yep.
something God is doing. I don't know. It's kind of exciting to know that this is true.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It actually lightens our load.
Yeah.
In difficult circumstances or difficult scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what he's doing. And of course, we see this in the book of Acts. We see this in the early chapters of Acts, especially where these guys are getting pulled in almost daily with the magistrates and the authorities there. They're getting busted, they're getting arrested, and we have recorded some of these responses from Peter and
Paul.
and they like stopped the mouths of the lion.
Yeah.
The way that they answered, and
Yeah.
so they wouldn't be able to hold them, and they wouldn't be able to keep them. They would just kind of beat them and threaten them, and then send them off to do the same thing again because of just the response. So you can definitely
Yeah.
see God working through some of that. How about not a hair on your head shall perish? Because he just got through giving them verses of how they're going to die. And what does that mean? Not a hair on your head shall perish. Probably a little different than not one stone upon another.
I'm going to go with the fact that
With metaphor?
that they all died, and he told them, specifically told them some of them they were going to have hairs on their head that would perish. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know what happens to your hair when you get boiled in
Yes.
oil, but I think this might be more of an eternal
Yeah.
I think so.
eternal promise.
Yeah.
Because before that, he says, some of you they will put to death.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's
Right
also
after that, but not a hair on your head will perish.
exactly.
Well, and when you think of the
right.
word perish,
exactly.
Perish has an eternal,
Oh, for sure.
connotation.
Yeah.
The idea, even in John 3:16, that idea of that word perish, it really is this
Yeah.
this death
Yeah.
that you can't escape. There is no hope in this word.
Sure.
And what he's telling them is that no, you guys are going to have an eternal.
Right, you have eternity.
That's what it is.
thrive
It's a
for
reality
Yep.
that
eternal
that
life.
Though you may die, you will live.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Right.
if you're in me, and these guys were in him, and so they don't experience death. we go from life to life.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think it's just a spiritual, eternal, statement, eternal reality.
Yeah.
And what I love is that he uses hair as an example. I may be reading too much into it, but that's one of those things that, again, is God knows every hair on our, like the things that are almost an impossibility for us to like quantify or count or keep up with. Like God's into every preserving and glorifying every detail. And that's just kind of a neat thing to think about, that there's not, we don't suffer loss, even physically.
Right.
Only gain physically. You know?
Well,
So,
the next thing he says tells us that by your endurance you will gain your lives. And so it may not go well here. It may not end well here. It may be a rough ending, difficult ending, but eternity.
Well, and as he said elsewhere, don't fear those who can, kill the body.
Right.
Fear the one that can put both body and soul in hell for eternity. And
Right.
so,
Totally.
being on the right side of who Jesus is and what he's doing
Totally.
is the important part.
All right, so here we go back to the temple thing. Did the Romans, when they did this in 87, did they get the right temple?
If their goal
Did
was
they destroy the right temple?
if their goal was to demolish, well, which time? You talking 80, 70? You talking about 80, 33?
Well, so Jesus made these prophecies
Okay.
that
80,
were
70.
for 80, 70.
Did
But
they
even then, did they get the right temple?
if their goal was to destroy the
Yes.
nation of Israel.
Now,
and-
Brent,
and-
you may
and-
do your thing.
Well, I don't know. I feel like this is a trick question.
No, it's not a trick question.
If their goal was to decimate the nation of Israel and to defeat the Jewish people, then I'd say they did a good job.
The people of God, let's just put it that way.
Well,
Concerning the people of God, did they get the right temple? The church.
no. The nation of Israel,
Yeah.
the Jewish people who may not have been the people of God, but that were trusted in that old system, then they got the right temple.
So here-
the church, no, they
So
missed.
here's my next question: the church's real temple. Did they also try to destroy that? Now
well,
you
they
may.
tried.
Yes.
Okay, prior to 80, 70.
Yeah, AD 33-ish.
And did they succeed?
Looked like it for a few days.
For 3 days. What's the statement that Jesus made, right? John chapter 2.
Destroy this temple.
Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. I mean, boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
So they tried to do it to both. Even though the Jews were actually responsible for that.
Right.
Rome was as well.
Sure.
But they did. They actually tried to kill both temples. One of them they succeeded at. One of them they did not.
Yep.
Which is why the church and the people of God are here doing what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And the temple that they destroyed and came back 3 days later can't be destroyed.
Cannot
ever
be destroyed.
again. And again, so this is the temple that you ought to trust in.
Yes.
And not anything else.
Well, let's end with that.
Yeah.
How is the temple of Christ better for the Jews and us, but for the Jews even, than the temple of Herod? In what ways is he the better
How
temple?
much time do we have? To
I
list
know,
the
like,
ways?
well, yeah. Let's just carry this into next week.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, the temple of Christ can't be destroyed. We've already talked about that. It's eternal.
but they thought that Herod's temple was pretty good. I mean, they're sitting
Right.
out there marveling at it and everything, and so even especially for them, yeah.
But even like you think about, a few years ago, we got to go back to New England and we got to see things that were 400 years old. Churches that were 400 years old.
You got to see the Cheers bar.
Right. That's not 400 years old, but we did get to see that.
That's a monument.
Right. But we got to see these big monuments and even cemeteries with headstones that were hundreds
Did you see
of
the Liberty
years
Bell
old.
and all that?
That's Philadelphia.
No, there's another bell. So, you know what?
Maybe just make your point.
Why
Ken.
are they out of school across the street? All right, go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
Anyway, the point is that like those monuments were cool, but what do they do for you? They don't do anything.
No.
Right. It's cool to see something that's lasted all that time, but it doesn't do anything
Right.
for anybody. But Christ has done something for us. His life
He's
mattered.
done something to us.
His death mattered. He's done something to
Yeah.
us. His resurrection mattered. His preparation of eternity for us
Yeah.
matters. Right.
Well, yeah.
Buildings don't do that.
In every way, he's the better temple.
Yeah.
The sacrifice that went on every day there is done now. It's finished in him. The way to approach God, Jesus is now that aspect of the temple for us. The way to the Holy of Holies for forgiveness of sin and all. It's all through Jesus now. I mean, so he literally is everything we need,
Right.
and he's out of reach of. Nobody can. You can't touch that. So. We have that, and then there's this idea of even what the temple has become now. the church, living stones built one another onto one another that are the dwelling place of God, where His Spirit dwells in this temple not built by hands.
Right.
Yeah.
People are right now still wondering when the temple's going to be rebuilt, and
Right.
how that's going to happen in Israel.
Did you want to talk about that?
Well, I'm just saying there's a possibility that it's being rebuilt right now spiritually
Through the
church, and that one day that last stone will be placed on, and
Which means that the Antichrist would have to stand in the midst of the church to defile it.
yeah.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know what that means exactly, but
I don't either.
there's a chance that, that the better temple is one that will never be stones
Yeah.
like the old one again, and so
I find it interesting that like with the original temple's structures, like it was all about man going in and doing works, performing works for God, and yet the Son of God, the temple of God in Christ, is one that performed works
Right.
for us, right? Like works come out of it for us rather than go into it, and
Right.
it's kind of a neat thing, and I'm sure we could go on and find all kinds of
Yeah.
like neat little parallels and whatnot. But that's the bottom line, is that it didn't matter when Jesus said this. Like it mattered to them, but Jesus knew that this thing was superficial, and that there was something much better, a much
Right.
better temple, right? That was just unnecessary.
well, and for those that
Compared to what
knew,
God
for
was
those that
doing.
knew them, AD 70 did not rock their world,
Right.
and I wish that more Christians today could get to that point.
Yeah.
The temple's going down one way or
Yep.
the other. Whatever America,
Yep.
whatever you want to, whatever it is that you're trusting in.
Statue of Liberty's going down.
All of
it's all
it's-
going
all of
down.
it's going
Constitution's
down.
going down. Flags
You
going
know,
down. Someday.
Yeah, we don't know when or how it's going to happen,
Yeah.
but if that's what you're trusting in, and that's what you're standing on, that's the foundation that you're standing.
That's
upon,
what you're treating people nasty over right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Then you're in for you're
Yeah.
you're in
Your
for
foundation is shaky.
disillusionment, and
Yep.
so all the Jewish people in AD 70 that didn't know Christ, their whole world crumbled around them that
All
day.
of it.
Everything went
All of it.
wrong. But those who knew Jesus,
And then they became wanderers, sojourners.
Yeah.
The people.
but those who knew Jesus, that didn't shake their foundation. It didn't. I mean, it probably
Right.
was shocking to them, but I get
Right.
that part. But as far as their hope,
Yep.
it was uninterrupted because their hope was in a different temple, and that's I just wish more people would get that, because there's such freedom. That's real freedom, is
Yeah,
knowing
absolutely.
that Christ can't be taken from me. He is mine, and I am His.
Yep.
Yeah, that
So we have
it.
something even to learn from the temple.
yeah.
Yep. Very good. Anything else, guys? I don't have anything else.
No.
I mean, maybe I
Think
do.
we
but
covered it.
I think that's good.
I'd say good.
All right, good. I'll go rewrite my sermon now. No, I'm just kidding. That's pretty much. You guys are on the money with me, so I'm down with that. All
Must
right.
be good then.
Oh, it's got to be so
That'd be
amazing.
awesome.
No. We're gonna go slap some people. So yeah. All right. When do you pray?
God, thanks for today and our discussion. Hope it was helpful to people. Just pray for all of us that you would help us to have a right perspective and a right understanding of who you are, where our identity lies as Christians, where it doesn't lie as Christians, and that you would help us just to maintain a gospel witness in the world, no matter how things tend to go. Help us to fight for the right things, engage in the right battles, and understand who the enemy is and isn't. We ask it all in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for tuning in.